So, John, let's start, if I may, with your children, both
Hmm.
teenagers, 14 and 17,
Yes.
in that critical period of anxiety that your new book is all about. So, how do your children feel about the dad who's trying to get the
Hmm.
smartphones out of their hands?
Well, it's complicated, and I mean, a general principle is that young kids desperately want everything. They want the smartphone, they want TikTok, they want everything because everyone else has it. All their friends have it, and that's now creeping down into elementary school, into fourth and fifth grade. Um, on the other hand, older kids, when you talk to kids who are 18 or 20, they generally say that this stuff was bad, it messed them up, and they're very understanding of limits. So with my kids, I said absolutely no social media until high school, and my son felt left out in sixth grade because when he moved from elementary to middle school in New York City, all the New York City public school kids in his school at least had phones, and they were beginning to get had Instagram. They actually were getting Instagram.
Mm, mm.
So he resented that a little bit, but he understood it. And then when he was in 10th grade, he created an Instagram account for himself without telling me. But by that time, he had shown that he's actually a very responsible kid, and he had joined the track team, and he needed to keep in touch with the track team. Oh, so sorry. Let me turn off. So sorry. Okay, hold on.
I think it's fitting that you just got the boing while we're talking about social media. Very fitting.
I know. That it interrupts everything.
Alex, we're going to leave that in. That's good. A little
Okay.
comic
Yeah.
relief.
Yeah. Leave it
Gotta
all
leave
in.
it
This
in.
is
You gotta
our,
leave it in.
that's right. This thing runs our lives now. Um, so so with my son, he did start an Instagram account, but he tells me that he hardly that he almost never posts.
Mhm.
Um, and so with him, everything's okay, and he doesn't have anxiety problems. My daughter is 14, and same thing. When she was going from elementary to middle school, she at the time she just had a phone watch, but this was during COVID, so everybody had to have a smartphone according to the school. Um, and all the girls had Instagram, and she wanted Instagram, and I said no. And a year later, she told me that she's actually glad she's not on Instagram because she can
Mm,
see that the Instagram girls are stupid. It makes these girls stupid, and they're focused
mm,
on their looks, their clothing. So that hasn't been a problem, except that now she just started high school, and now she really wants Snapchat because
mm.
the kids don't text that much; they all use Snapchat, and I've said no to that as well. And so that
Mm.
I am imposing a cost on my
Yeah.
daughter for now, which I hope will be a benefit in the long run. And my campaign is that no parent ever has to do this by themselves again. No parent
Mm.
will ever be the only one saying no. That's the way we beat this.
That's so good. Oh, all right. We're going to come back to that because that. I love that rallying cry. Um, all right. So let's now talk about you and your childhood. So the
Hmm.
subtitle of the book talks about the great rewiring of childhood. What was
Hmm.
your childhood like? Where did you grow up? What did you
Hmm.
love?
Yeah. So I was born in northern New Jersey. I don't have any memories of it. When I was 5, we moved to Scarsdale, New York, a town north of New York City. And I had a great, typical, American suburban childhood. By third grade, I'm certain that by third grade, me and my best friend were riding our bicycles all over town. And there was some woods, and we were finding like hideouts, like rocks we could crawl under, and we're making forts. Um, by fifth grade, I remember we had a rock fight with boys at a neighboring school over territory. So it was adventurous.
Uh-huh.
We didn't really do any shoplifting, but we did steal shopping carts because you can bash off the top of a shopping cart, and then you have these wheels. You can make a go-kart. So very typical, but it was all outdoors. There was no adult supervision. Certainly from the age of 8 on, third grade on, I'm sure there was no adult
Yeah.
supervision. Um, and sometimes we got hurt. Sometimes you
Yeah.
fall on your bicycle, and you discover that, yeah, it really hurts and you're bleeding, but you can still limp home. Your friend helps get you home. And if anything really serious, some other adult will call your mother.
Yeah.
So
It,
now I grew up in a very safe town. I just want to
yeah.
point out, had I grown up in New York City, it would have been the same thing. There are all these videos from the 70s and 80s of kids playing outdoors in New York City. So this is the way almost all kids in America were raised. It would be absurd to have adults supervising 10-year-olds.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You've used the word typical twice, and I think it's important to argue it was typical for the 70s or 60s or whenever it was you were a
Oh,
child.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
typical for, let's say, the 1940s through
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
Certainly, there were kids in the Industrial Revolution who didn't get to play, and there were kids in
Right.
the early agricultural revolution who didn't
Right.
get to play. So, yeah.
It is funny. I have two memories that are coming up for me, and I think this is fun. And I would encourage everybody who's listening to reflect on some of your childhood memories. But I remember two in particular. We lived on a street corner in a suburban in San Jose, California, and my
Mhm.
sister and I, when cars would come past, we would pretend like they were going to attack us. So we would like dive into the ivy so that they couldn't see us.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
remember being 11 or 12 and hitting seventh grade, and my friends and I riding bikes all around the neighborhood, no hands, and that sense of freedom that we felt.
Yeah.
It was
That's right.
glorious. It was
That's right.
glorious.
But you know what? Your story is actually amazing because I think what made my book different, my book isn't just social media is bad. The first third of the book is about childhood and play. It's not about social media. And I review research on how play is a universal feature of being a mammal. All mammal babies play. They
Mhm.
have to play to wire up their
Mhm.
brains. And a lot of what they're doing is practicing the skills they need to survive in their environment. So you grew up in San Jose where there were no predators. You didn't have any predators to actually run from, but you
Mhm.
needed them to practice. So you said, hey, let's pretend that this car coming along is like a lion and let's practice our childhood survival skills. And it's great fun. That's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
We were
Well,
building, we were negotiating, and so this was, this is what childhood, I believe, needs to be. And this is what my book is about why did we stop doing that in the 90s? And then why did we really end it in 2010?
mm. And I want to go there now, John, this book, The Anxious Generation, it's been 6 years in the making, probably longer than that. I want to understand, why does this topic matter to you so deeply? Like, why did you
Mhm.
feel like you were maybe even called to write this book? What happened?
Yeah, and it was a roundabout path because my research is centrally on morality and politics, the way that our political lives are an extension of our moral lives. And I study moral tribalism, the culture war. I'm extremely alarmed about the direction of American democracy.
Mm.
That has been my passion since the 2000s and my book, The Righteous Mind. That's been my focus. But I did this side project because in 2015, the university started melting down in a weird way. And my friend Greg Lukianoff, I think, figured out what was going on, and we wrote a whole book called The Coddling of the American Mind, which laid out how vast overprotection and the deprivation of play and a bunch of other things and the culture war and all sorts of things combined so that the students coming in 2014, 2015 were really different from the college students we'd seen in 2012. And we thought they were all millennials. We didn't have a term called Gen Z back then in 2014. But now we know the reason they were so different is they were a different generation. They were a generation with much, much higher levels of anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide. 50 to 150% on almost all these variables. It depends on the study. But we're not talking 10 or 20% increase. We're
Yeah.
talking 50 to 150% increases in all of these variables. So, if you were born in 1993, you're a millennial, you probably have pretty good mental health. If you were born in 1997, you're Gen Z, you have much worse mental health. So anyway, so that book and the
Mm.
decline of universities, which has continued to the present day. Universities used to have the greatest brand in the world. America's elite universities were the greatest in the world. Everybody wanted to come here, and now we're a laughing stock. We've ruined our reputation, and it's our own fault. So that's what I was working on. And then I was going to write a book. I got a contract to write a book called Life After Babel, Adapting to a World We May Never Again Share, because it was clear to me that with social media, was changing relationships in ways that were making academic life really difficult. We couldn't have open discussions anymore. If you say any word that someone objects to, it becomes a whole big thing. So everybody's been
Mhm.
walking on eggshells and teaching on eggshells since 2015, and I hate that. So that's what I was really focused on, and then I was going to write about how that is now affecting our whole democracy. And my plan was, because I had all this data on teen mental health, and I just written this book on Gen Z. So my plan was to say, okay, I'm going to start off chapter 1 showing, look what happened to teenagers who were the first ones to move their social lives onto social media. I'll do that in chapter 1, say, look, it drove them crazy. And now I'll spend the rest of the book looking at what happens when America's civic life, or any democracy, when your civic life is conducted not in the public square, not in newspapers and editorials and letters to the editor, but on Twitter, and Instagram and a few other platforms. How does that distort democracy? So that was my plan. But once I got that first chapter written and I laid out all the graphs, showing these incredible hockey stick shapes, these incredible inflection points around 2012, I said, wow, I can't just present this and move on. This is a major mystery, especially because even though I knew it was happening in the UK as well, I discovered it's also happening in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the Nordic countries. Something is happening in the developed world to our children, and it began between 2010 and 2015. So
Mhm.
that is the mystery. I decided I have to write a whole book on this now. Like, I can't wait 3 years to finish this big
Yeah.
book on democracy.
Yeah.
So I asked the publisher, can we split the book in two? Let me get out this book on teen mental health first, and then I'll go right back to the democracy book. I'll start working on that in the fall of 2025. It'll be great. And then what happened was,
Uh-huh.
this book has blown up. And part of the reason is that we can actually solve this problem, which we'll
Yeah.
get to. But
Mhm.
that's why I'm so excited about this. And that's why I'm putting all my effort into this. Our
Mm.
democracy is in huge trouble. But frankly, this is even more urgent. We've got to cut this off now.
Right. And this is more foundational. If we can solve this, then there will be a positive outcome for our democracy as well.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Okay. So Um, at our firm, Disruption Advisors, we focus on the S curve as a model for what growth looks and feels like. The launch point of a curve almost always involves discomfort, awkwardness, frustration, like when you said,
Hmm.
you're debating an idea, we don't know what we think, it's uncomfortable. What does the rewiring of childhood, what is that doing to our children's ability to be agentic? So what are some of the
Mm.
implications?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, first, just tell me, the S curve. Do you just mean that over time progress is slow, and then you reach a point where the change happens, and then it levels off? What is the S curve?
Yeah, so you're probably familiar with it from an adoption curve standpoint of like there's slow,
Oh.
fast, slow. So but
Hmm.
when we're thinking about it from a individual growth perspective, there's this idea at the launch point. Growth is actually very fast mathematically, but it's under the surface, so you can't feel it. So you have the experience of it feeling
Mm.
slow, and so your dopamine drops. But then, if you put in the effort, you're going to hit this tipping point that Malcolm Gladwell
Right.
popularized. You go into the sweet
Right.
spot where growth is fast and it feels fast, so it's exhilarating and we love it. And then there's this place of
Yeah.
mastery where growth is now slow because you're actually
Hmm.
in sweet spot, the dopamine is spiking because you're having these emotional upside
Yeah.
surprises. But in mastery, there's not so much because you're not learning at the rate you once were, so you need to do something new. So you now
Right.
have this explanatory mechanism
Oh,
for
wow.
this experience of growing. And so what we often talk about is, okay, if you understand this, it will normalize your experience of doing something new, and you can walk yourself through, oh, I'm in the first
Mm.
week of college.
Right.
I am uncomfortable. Maybe I don't want to be in college. No, you're just at the launch point. And so it allows you
Yeah.
to be agentic. And so, but my question for you is, okay, if we're so phone based, how does that hamper our ability to be agents in our own lives?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, I got it. This is great. All right, I'm going to try out a crazy metaphor for you.
Oh, I love crazy
Um,
metaphors.
okay. Suppose we were to give everybody a cyanide pill so that they could kill themselves whenever they wanted to, because, people should have that right. That would be a completely insane thing to do, because people sometimes hit a hard part of life, or they're suffering, and a lot of people would choose to end it.
Yeah.
But if they just stuck it out, so I mean, it's a completely insane idea.
Hmm.
Okay, by analogy, what if we all had a little pill so whenever anything is difficult, any real challenge, any unpleasantness. We take the pill, and now everything feels great.
Mm.
I bring this up because I'm just rereading Brave New World,
Mm. Mm.
Aldous
Yeah, yeah,
Huxley's
yeah, yeah.
book that we all read. We read
Right,
in
in
high
high school.
school.
Uh-huh.
It's an amazing book,
Uh-huh.
and everyone just, if there's a problem, just take Soma and problem solved.
Huh.
This is also a completely insane thing to do because we don't want, especially our children, but even us, we don't want to give people a way out of every problem, a psychological way out, just make
Mhm.
the suffering go away. Um, or what if I'm sitting at my desk, I'm trying to write, and every time I get to a hard passage, I have 100 other things that I can do, which is what I do. Like, I actually don't have problems with my phones because I don't use my phone that much. I'm always on my computer, and whenever the writing gets hard, I check the weather or I see what someone said about me on Twitter. I do use Twitter to some extent. I kind of have to.
Mhm.
I recognize it's bad for me, but I try to keep it low. Anyway, my point is, life is full of hard challenges, and if you always have an escape hatch, always, you just press a button and you're out.
Mm.
That's terrible. It's a
Mm.
terrible way to live. It dawned on me, I don't think I've read a book in 5 years. Now, I've listened to books on tape, or audiobooks, because that goes on and on and on. You can't stop it. Whereas when I try to read a book, I get distracted. I do other things. So I mean, obviously, I'm reading a lot to write books, but I
Mhm.
haven't read a whole book
Mm.
in a long time, other than on audio. So back to your S curve
Yeah.
question. Um, a distinction that I learned, especially from talking with Andrew Huberman, is between fast dopamine and slow dopamine.
Mhm.
If you have, obviously, dopamine it's not, as Huberman says, don't think about it as a reward. Like, I did work and I got the reward. I feel good. Think about, and I say this in the book too, think about it as the reinforcer that makes you want to keep doing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when a rat presses a button and gets a treat, it doesn't stop pressing the button. It's more likely to press the button because it's gotten quick dopamine.
Yeah.
And so now think about your children. Do you want your children to have instant entertainment, amazing entertainment with them all the time, even in class? You're bored in class, pull out your phone. This is a terrible thing to do to our children. So I think the S curve is really powerful because what it's saying is you have some hard things to do, and there are going to be a lot of times when you want to bail out because it's
Mhm.
hard. And if you stick it out, you'll get the slow dopamine,
Mhm.
which is incredibly rewarding
Yeah.
because it's not just like a feeling of pleasure, it's a feeling of satisfaction that you've done something. My students some of them spend 5 hours a day on TikTok. And they say at the end of that, they what have I done? I
Mhm.
have accomplished nothing. I don't even know what I saw. I don't even remember what I saw. So they had lots of little quick dopamine from seeing enjoyable things, but it didn't add up to anything.
Mhm.
Whereas the S curve is about living your life. Again, I'm just putting words into your mouth. I'm guessing this is what it is, but
Feel free.
the
I'm
S
enjoying
curve.
it.
Okay, the S curve is about how you have to kind of climb a mountain
Mhm.
to really do anything important in life. And if at every point there's a little ski chute that allows you to just sit on a sled and go down to the bottom, it'll be fun.
Mhm.
It's a joyride. Then nobody ever gets to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. I love that. Something that you just said that I thought was interesting is that ability to help you persist to get the slow dopamine. And so so basically what I hear, you talked about this movement, and we're going to come back to the parents, but it's a movement to also, or an outcome of this is that people are going to be agents in their own lives by understanding this
Yeah,
in this work.
that's right. That agency is such an important word, and,
Mhm.
and this is something that has really dropped in Gen Z. Even though, in a sense, a phone is a multifunction tool that should make you into somebody super powerful.
Yeah.
We basically we have omniscience. When you and I were young,
Mhm.
if God came to you and said, "Would you like to know everything at your beck and call? Would you like to be able to just know everything within 2 seconds?"
Yeah.
Like, we would have said, "Yeah." And I'm glad that we do. I
Mhm.
love Google. I
Right.
love being able to search. But so these things should make us super powerful, super productive, and super happy. But they don't. And often they don't even make us productive because the original iPhone was just a digital Swiss Army knife.
Mm.
It was not addictive. There were only the apps that Apple gave you. So it was a music player, it was a telephone, it was a web browser, it was a flashlight, and there was a map. There was a
Yeah.
small set of tools. That was 2007. In 2008, Apple makes available these software development kits that other companies can now create apps. They also gave us the App Store. So by 2010, 2011, this thing is not a Swiss Army knife. This thing is now becoming a master for many people, because it is now, you're not picking up when you want something. It is pinging you when it or somebody else wants something. And it's that, I think, is really the turning point, is the notifications. When we turn our day over, like my phone just interrupted me with something before because
Right.
I had left my ringer on. Um, when we're getting 200 or 300 notifications a day, which is what my students get, we're giving up our attention. We're
Yeah.
saying, how about if I never think for 30 minutes straight? How about if I always get interrupted every
Oof.
5 minutes? And that's tragic.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Okay. So one of your mic drop moments in the book, and which I think is, I'll share this with you, and then we can go to some of the foundational reforms that you recommend, is overprotection in the real world. I can't say that word. In the real world,
Mm-hmm.
and underprotection in the virtual world is why
That's
this
right.
has become the anxious generation.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's right.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. Oh, no. Well, I'm happy to explain that and
Okay.
more, but is there a
Okay.
question that you want to add, or just?
Well, I was going to go straight to the foundational reforms, but why don't you elaborate on that for a second, and then talk
Okay.
about some of the foundational reforms that you are recommending?
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yes. No, I'd like to elaborate on this because I think this is really the crux of the book, and especially for parents.
Mm-hmm.
We all are afraid for our children.
Mm-hmm.
We all, when they're slow to come home from school, we think the worst. I mean, anything can happen. We think. We all want our children to be safe. And we began really freaking out in the 1990s. Reports of child abduction, which are extremely rare, but we all started fearing our neighbors, fearing that our children were unsafe unless we were watching them, or somebody we trusted was watching them. So we became very overprotective in the real world in the 90s in America, and Britain and Canada, actually. And while that was happening, the internet was coming in, and the internet was amazing. And personal computers with the internet were even, that was like totally amazing. And kids loved it. Kids flocked to computers, especially boys. And so we're keeping our kids in, but they're playing on the computer. And well, isn't that good? They're safe and they're learning, and it's technology and it's, programming. Some were learning to program. So we were lulled into thinking that it's okay for us to pull them out of the world. It's okay that we've stopped letting them roam around and pretend that cars are hunting them like tigers. We stopped all that, but look what they're doing online. Isn't it great? And at first it kind of was great. And the millennials, those born between 1981 and 1995, they came out fine. They had a different childhood. They grew up with the internet, most of them. But they came out fine. They're creative. They travel around the world. They start companies. Something changed between 2010 and 2015 that made the environment much more toxic. Kids who went through puberty with smartphones and social media, they became Gen Z. Whereas kids who went through puberty with the internet on their family computer and a flip phone in their hand, they enjoyed technology that allowed them to connect to the world and connect to each other. They were not being manipulated by that world very much. So everything really changes 2010 to 2015. And what I'm hoping that parents will see is that we have to lighten up and loosen up in the physical world, where we've just gotten it totally wrong. Our kids need to have adventures and take risks in the real world in order to mature their brains. So we've got to loosen up there. And we've got to tighten up in the virtual world. I mean, especially for under 16s. Once you give your kid a phone, you're giving them unlimited access to the internet. Now you can play the games, you can say I'm putting on parental controls, you can say I'm limiting it to this or that, but it's going to be a struggle for the rest of the time your kid is at home with you.
Yeah.
This is family life all over the world is now a struggle over screen time. And so, so we have to be more careful about what our kids are doing online. And the best way by far is just delay. Just don't let them have their own portal. I'm not saying keep them away from the internet. You can have a computer in the kitchen, and you can have your 5-year-old do some things online. That's okay. The internet is not intrinsically bad. It's intrinsically wonderful, actually,
Yeah,
I think.
for sure.
But the day you give your child a smartphone or a tablet or even a laptop to have in their room and use on their own is the day you're saying the entire world can get to you, including all kinds of men who want photos of you. And you can get to the entire world, including pornography and horrible, violent videos, things like that. So, how do we get out of this? That's what the 4 reforms are about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, the reason that we're so trapped in this is because we give our, like as we were talking before, everyone in 6th grade had Instagram. That put pressure on everyone else to give their kids Instagram, even though it's wildly inappropriate for 11-year-old kids. So it's a collective action problem. We've been pushed by peer pressure and collective pressure to give in, and it keeps moving down lower and lower into elementary school now. So the way out is collective also. And so what I propose in the book is 4 norms. If we embrace just 4 simple norms, we can break this trap. We can break out. So they are no smartphone before high school.
Mm-hmm.
So in the United States, at least, that's around 14. In Europe, that's often the middle of their secondary school. So in Britain and Spain, the organizations there are saying no smartphone till the end of secondary school, which is more like 16.
Mm-hmm.
That might be difficult to implement because the world kind of expects you to have a smartphone if you're doing financial stuff and all sorts of things. But anyway, in the US, no smartphone before 14, no social media before 16. We need a national minimum age. It was supposed to be 16 originally. It got pushed down to 13 with no enforcement.
Mm.
There's no enforcement. The companies have no obligation to actually check if you're 13. So no social media till 16. The 3rd norm is phone-free schools. When kids have phones in their pockets, they're not paying attention to the teacher very much. They're not even paying attention to the other kids.
Right.
In between classes, they're not talking and laughing.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their phones. And whenever a school goes phone-free, whenever a school locks up the phones in the morning, you always hear the same thing. They hear laughter in the hallways again. It used to be silence in between classes. Now they hear laughter. So it's so sad that our kids are so lonely. This generation is so lonely compared to any previous generation. And it's because they don't have any time with each other. And if we just take the phones for the school day, they'll actually talk and joke and laugh with each other a lot more.
Yeah.
And then the final reform is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. Because if we're going to take away most of the screen time, I mean, look, the kids are on, the latest numbers are something like 9 to 12 hours a day of screen time, not counting school. Just outside of school, 9 to 12. That's almost all the time.
Yeah.
And if we're going to take almost all of that away, especially from kids up through middle school, we have to give them something to do. And what better to do than normal childhood? What better to do than the freedom to play a game with your friend where you pretend that cars are tigers and you jump into the bushes? Like, that's what they should be doing. That's what we have to give them.
So good. It's so simple, so straightforward. Okay, so that's what parents can do, and we collectively as a society can do. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy called this week for warning labels on social media. Same way a pack of cigarettes tells us they cause cancer, still people smoke. What's the role of government in rewiring the anxious generation? And what's something that those of us who are listening, we're having this conversation, that we can do beyond those 4 basic reforms as citizens? Is there something additional you would recommend?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, in general, I have some sympathies with libertarianism, and I have some sympathies that the government shouldn't be out telling us what we can and can't do as adults. But I have no sympathies for a situation in which the biggest, most powerful companies in the world can get to our children, do whatever they want to them, show them anything. And Congress has said in its wisdom that we can't sue them. Section 230. So in a sense, the government set up a lot of this problem. They created Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which said you can't hold the platforms liable for what other people put up. This has been broadly interpreted to say even if TikTok has an algorithm that channels your daughter nothing but suicide content, well, that's protected. No, this has to change. So anyway, so I wrote the book as an American, assuming that we might never get any help from Congress, because Congress is slow to act on everything. Now, on this, there is actually bipartisan support because parents in both parties really have the same concerns. We're all having the same fights with our kids. We all see the same threats. So there are some bills that really might pass, especially COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. That's the one that might pass this year.
Mhm.
So I'm very hopeful about that. But the big change, the real game changer, is going to be age gating. Is going to be when Congress says, okay, we said the age was 13 to open an account, to give away your data, to sign a contract with a company, to do all this without your parents' knowledge. First, how about if we make the companies responsible for actually enforcing 13?
Mm.
And then once we work out how they're going to do that, these
Mm.
are the smartest companies in the world. They'll
Right.
figure out a mechanism
Exactly.
to get parental. So once they get that for 13, then I think we raise the age to 16, which is where it needs to be.
Mm.
I'm open in Florida. That's what they're doing. In Florida, they added on a provision that, well, with the parents' permission, you can get on at 15 or 14. I'm actually okay with that, because if it truly is up to the parents, and most parents are going to say no, then that's okay with
Mhm.
me. So
Mhm.
there's some flexibility here about how we implement this, but we have to have a national and global understanding that 11 and 12-year-old girls should not be talking with strange men all around the world, that our 14-year-old boys should not be able to be sextorted by sextortion gangs
Mhm.
all over the world, who once they get a picture of the boy, and his penis, because he thinks he's flirting with a sexy girl, they then blackmail him and say, "Oh, we got you now. We're going to send your photo to everyone in your contacts." And dozens of these boys have committed suicide. Those are just the known cases of
Wow.
suicides.
Wow.
So we've got to start understanding this is a really dangerous consumer product.
Mhm.
And that was the Surgeon General's point.
Mm.
That even though I am still engaged in a debate, Jean Twenge and I are engaged in debate with other researchers, the science is not settled
Yeah.
in the sense of science, the social science have not reached agreement. But I think what Dr. Murthy's point was, we have a consumer product in which hundreds and hundreds of parents are saying, my kid is dead because of this.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the design of the product that fed my kid all this stuff, the product that linked strangers, criminals, to my child. It's a design flaw. And so it's a dangerous product. If there was any other product that was killing dozens or hundreds of kids every year, the least we would do is put a warning label on it. We
Yeah.
would probably pull it from the market.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what I think I'm hearing you say is that we as citizens can do is just be aware of what kind of laws are being enacted and support them. So there was one that you mentioned a minute ago that you think has a real
Mhm.
possibility of getting passed. Could you
Yeah.
say what that one
Yeah,
is again?
that's right. Yes. So the Kids Online Safety Act,
Okay.
it has a bunch of features modeled after a UK code.
Mhm.
It establishes that there's some duty of care. It just forces the platforms to stop doing some of the more exploitative things
Great.
to children.
Perfect.
It says children are not the same as adults. You have to treat them different if they're under 18.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
So yes, as in any democracy, people should talk to their representatives, make it clear that they think the government has a role to play. So that's what you can do with the federal government.
Mhm.
State governments are actually being very active. Most of the action is in state capitals,
Mm.
Florida, Utah.
Mhm.
My governor here in New York has proposed some really good limits on what companies can do to our kids. The governor of California just announced yesterday he's going to push for phone-free schools all across the state. I think we're going to get that in New York too, New York City and New York State.
It's good.
So local and state governments are really acting. Parents everywhere see the same thing. We all share the same concerns.
Mhm.
We all have the same fears. And so this is moving very, very fast.
Mm.
And that's why I'm so excited.
Yay.
Because, we're, years and years of waiting for Congress to act, and they've done nothing since
Mhm.
1998 when they created the problem. Nothing. But we can actually move this not just on the state and local level. We can move it in our own schools. And that's where we're seeing the most activity. This is so exciting. All over the world now, at least all over the Western world, parents groups are coming together and saying, we're going to support each other. We're going to delay giving our kids smartphones till 14. We're going to follow those 4 norms. And one of them is we're going to go in to see the principal of our kids' school and say, please give the kids 6 hours a day to talk to each other and the teacher. Like, get them away from their phones for 6 hours a day so they can learn. This is happening very, very fast, just in the last couple of months. So I'm actually pretty confident we're going to win. Like, I've never seen social change happen this fast.
Oh, I just got chills. That's really wonderful. It's really, really good. Oh. Okay. So a pressing question, if you're a 20-something like our producer, Alex, he grew up in this transition from flip to smartphones, or anyone actually. reading your
Hmm.
book or listening to this podcast and thinking about the damage that has already been done to our brains. Um, how do you alleviate how terrifying that is, and what do you
Yeah.
do? And
Yeah.
you've got some spiritual
Hmm.
practices that I want to talk about, but let's start there.
Hmm.
What's your thought process?
Yeah.
How do you help people not freak
So,
out?
yeah. So, so part of the narrative structure of my book was a sort of descent into darkness,
Mhm.
going through all the problems, but then an ascent back into light because we can actually fix this.
Yeah.
And um, and I'm very fortunate that I teach at the NYU Stern School of Business, where I have flexibility to teach whatever I want that's relevant to the students. And so I chose to teach a course called Flourishing, which I used to teach back at the University of Virginia when I was there for a long time. Wonderful university.
Oh,
Um,
just a quick pause. I live in Lexington.
oh, do you? Oh, I love Lexington. What a pretty town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, God, the Blue Ridge Mountains,
Yep.
Shenandoah
Exactly.
Valley. Oh, I love it.
Exactly.
Love it all.
Okay. Keep
Yeah.
going. So UVA,
Um,
NYU.
Yeah. So at NYU, I teach a course called Flourishing. And I taught it for a long time as an MBA course, 28-year-olds mostly who want it just how do you enjoy your career more?
Mhm.
And we talked a little bit about the phones because the phones dominated their lives too. But they were all millennials. They all had flip phones through puberty. So it didn't change their brains during that sensitive period of puberty. Well, the mental health crisis is so severe in every school in the country that I switched. I created an undergrad version of the course that I started teaching 2 years ago.
Mm.
So I've gotten to know the undergrads much better, and they're mostly, let's say, 19. They're mostly sophomores in my class.
Yeah.
And so if you're in your late teens or early 20s, the brain doesn't really sort of lock down into place until the mid 20s. But even if it has, what we're finding is if you change your habits, you change your life. And right now, the phone is like your own personal dog trainer, where you're the dog and it's the trainer. And so I'll just tell you a couple of things we do. Actually, you know what? People can find that you can find the syllabus for the course on our website. So if you go to anxiousgeneration.com, that's the
Yeah.
website for the book. Go to Take Action, actions for Gen Z, actions that young people can take themselves. And one of the actions there is look at here's the syllabus for my course. Here's all the readings, and here's all the lecture. Like I have all the lecture slides, so you can actually follow
Fantastic.
along with what we do in each session of the 14 sessions. Um, and the foundation of it all is taking back control of your attention.
Mm-hmm.
If you give your attention away to every company that asks, you have no attention to do anything that matters in life. You're just going to be a passive consumer. You're going to be swiping and scrolling and liking, and you're not going to do anything. And these are business students. They're ambitious. They want to actually have an effect on the world. So they love it. They take to it right away. And so we work really hard on improving their morning routine and their
Mm-hmm.
evening routine. Actually, let's do evening first, because let's think about, you have this period from say 10 o'clock at night to 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, which is not your work day.
Mm-hmm.
What are all the things you need to do to recharge, to be healthy, to take care of in your life? So let's make sure you're getting good sleep. What are your habits?
Mm-hmm.
And for almost all my students, because I make them count back, like, what's the last thing you do before you close your eyes? Like, you've turned out is it turned out,
Yeah.
well, yeah, what's the last thing? And for the great majority, the last thing is check their notifications, texts, things that are coming in. And then they close their eyes. Lights are already out. They brush their teeth. So you're spending, like, almost all of this time, you're spending this recharge time actually hooked up and responding to the rest of the world. You're not taking control of it. And then, most of them get enough sleep, but about a third don't. So for that third, like, okay, you need to actually get at least, 7 hours sleep. You need to lengthen your sleep, or at least get as much as you can. So we'll work on that. And then in the morning, what's the first thing you do? And for almost all of them, it's check your notifications.
Mm-hmm.
Very first thing. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't get out of bed. Check your notifications. And so once they see that their entire day is basically checking notifications and responding, always responding, rather than being an agent, rather than saying, here are my goals for the day.
Yeah.
I'm going to face constant pressures to not do them. I'm going to face constant interruptions and demands from other people that I do something. What kind of life do I want to have? Do I want to have a life spent entirely responding to other people's notifications and interruptions? Or do I want to actually get a few things done every day and prioritize those?
Mm.
And we get amazing results. So it starts with taking back your attention.
Yeah.
The students, we work with them to turn off almost all of their notifications. Most of my students get a notification. Their phone vibrates every time an email comes in. An email, even a junk mail.
Oof.
So, because they don't know that
Yeah.
their attention is a precious resource, they think, well, it might be valuable information. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss any information. And that's the wrong way to think. What you have to think is you have a very limited amount of attention. Think about, you have like 100 drops of attention to spend during your day.
Mm.
Do you want to give away a drop to every little thing? No, you have to guard it like it's gold.
Mm. Oh,
So
so
anyway,
good.
my point is,
Love it.
advice to anyone in their 20s:
Yeah.
regain control of your attention, become the director of your life, get a good evening routine, get a good morning routine. You'll find handouts on the
Mhm.
website, a very simple handout that helps you organize. What do you do? What are the last 5 things you do before you close your eyes? Um, so take control of your attention, take control of your time, get that really good recharge period.
Mm.
And then for the rest of the day, the work day or the school day, let's call it 8 or 9 a.m. to 9 or 10 p.m. Now we'll deal with that in later classes, but we have to get the foundation first.
Yeah, these routines. Okay. All right. So just a couple more questions as we start to wrap up. You talk in the book about a number of spiritual practices we can engage in to counter the trends of a phone-based life. I think there were 6 of them. We won't go through all 6. I want to just pick 1 or 2 that I would love for you to talk about, either
Mm-hmm.
embodiment or slow to anger, quick to forgive, and you get to choose.
Okay,
Pick
sure.
your own.
So just for listeners, just a tiny bit of background, is my first book was called The Happiness Hypothesis: Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom. And it was 10 chapters on the psychological wisdom of the ancients. What are some insights that they had east and west from thousands of years ago? And so I wrote that book. It's my only really positive, uplifting book. And when I was almost done with this book, which was all about what's happening to kids, and I realized, wait, I haven't said anything about adults, and we're all
Mm.
feeling this. We're all feeling fragmented. We're all feeling confused. It's not rewiring our brains as much because we made it through puberty, but it is damaging our quality of life to be overwhelmed all the time. And I started saying, okay, well, what should I put if I'm going to have a chapter on how adults can have a better phone-based life, less
Mhm.
draining? What would I say? And what I realized is that the phone-based life is basically pushing us to do the opposite of everything in the happiness hypothesis.
Mm.
It's almost as
Mm.
though the designers of social media said, "What's a recipe for a flourishing life? Let's try to reverse it." Like, obviously, they didn't say that. I think they thought they were doing good originally, but as they battled with each other
Yeah.
to grab our attention, so so let's take embodiment. Um, uh, I, I'm an atheist myself, but I've come to have tremendous respect for religion and religious practices because religious people are happier. Religious communities bring out the best in people, at least in the United States. If not, it doesn't, not necessarily always, but in the United States they do. Um, and I, as a person interested in anthropology and evolution, I've studied rituals a lot, and I'm very interested in rituals. And um, religions that bind people together, you move in unison.
Mhm.
You kneel to express subordination to God. You sing. You put your arms around. You do. I mean, religious worship is usually not just cerebral; it's physical, and there's good psychological reasons for that. We are embodied creatures. Our thinking, in a sense, it goes on just in our brain. I mean, literally, I think that's true. But our brain represents our body so much that our body is really all over our brain. And, um, kids need to run around together. And people would say, well, what's wrong if they're running around in the virtual world? What's wrong if they're running around on video games? And you might think, well, maybe it's just as good. But it turns out it's not.
Mhm.
On video games, my son, he wanted to play Fortnite in 6th grade. I said no. I did let him start in 8th grade. And in limited amounts, I think it's okay. But a lot of boys get hooked. Anyway, the point is, they're having adventures. They're jumping out of airplanes. They're attacking other groups of boys. That's fun. That's definitely fun. I don't want to take away from that. but it's nothing like what I had with my best friend, because they're getting just lots and lots of quick hits of dopamine. Whereas my friend and I, it was really hard to do the things we did. Like we would build a fort and we would stock it with rocks in case we were attacked by another group of boys, like, which only happened once, but it was, we were preparing for war.
Mhm.
That was slow dopamine. Whereas boys on video games, they're getting lots and lots of quick dopamine. And I wonder, like my best friend Krista and I, like, we reminisce about all these adventures.
Yeah.
And boys who grow up on video games, what are they going to say? Hey, Bill, you remember that Fortnite game number 23,764 where you were trapped behind that storefront and I had to shoot you out? And Bill is going to say, no, I don't remember that game.
Yeah.
Because it was all disembodied, cheap, easy dopamine.
Right. So
that's the first.
Yeah. So just on the embodiment, I think, again, thinking of this as a spiritual practice, is this idea of doing things and this is for children, but also for adults, of doing things where we're in our body. And I think it's interesting because I found myself recently, I tried surfing over Christmas and I just went and did tennis lessons and I did rappelling. And one of the things I'm hearing you say, or I'm interpreting, is like, we can counter that phone-based life by doing things that require our body. I think you also talked about eating together and having those meals. So being fully present in our physical being.
That's right. Being fully present in our physical being, in close proximity to other people, friends and family. The best is moving together in time. So singing together, swaying together, praying together, playing sports together, moving together in time.
Interesting.
It makes you fully present and it activates all of your mind. Because again, the body is just all over the mind.
Yeah.
The body is very woven in to the mind. And that is a recipe for healthy experience and for close relationships. What's so striking about what happened at Gen Z is as soon as the girls moved their social life onto social media and were hyper connected, you'd think they'd be hyper happy. But no, that's exactly when they became depressed and they become lonelier. You'd think when the boys now you can go home from school and any kid can find boys to play with in an online game. You'd think that would be great for boys. But it turns out that's when boys get more lonely because, yes, it's fun. It's definitely fun. But it takes up so much time that you don't actually see your friends in real life. You have a disembodied childhood. And the graph that gets the most comment in the entire book is the one where I show hospitalization rates for broken bones. And it used to be, until 2012, what group do you suppose breaks bones the most? Teenage boys.
Right.
They're riding their bicycle over jump ramps. We used to climb on rooftops and we would do all kinds of things. I never had a broken bone, but we took risks. And sometimes, boys, and when you and I were young, didn't you sometimes see a kid with a cast in school?
Yeah.
A kid would have a cast on his arm. You almost never see that now. It's very, very rare. And what I show in that graph from CDC data is that teenage boys used to be the most likely to break a bone. Now they're the least likely group of men. They're still a little higher than girls. But teenage boys are now less likely to be hospitalized for a broken bone than their own fathers or grandfathers are today.
Wow.
Because their fathers and grandfathers are doing things that might break a bone.
Wow.
Teenage boys are not. They're just on video games and pornography.
Wow. Okay.
So embodiment.
Yes.
Kids have to be embodied.
All right. I love it. Now, do you want to do the other one, or I want to be sensitive to your time?
Okay. Well, just very briefly,
Okay.
Slow to anger,
Okay.
quick to forgive. Every great tradition urges us, judge not lest ye be judged. In the Jewish tradition, there are a variety of quotes like the greatest conqueror is he who conquers his own anger. I forget the quote, but there are a variety of admonitions to not let anger take you away. Forgiveness, all the great movements urge us to be forgiving towards our enemies. Well, if you grow up or if you spend as an adult any amount of time on Twitter or many other platforms, what are the norms? The norm, what emerges is judge now, right now, lest others judge you for not judging. Judge hundreds of times a day, maybe thousands, and move on. No worry about context. No worry about whether you got it right. If you got it wrong, you're not going to apologize. That would be embarrassing. So in so many ways, a life online is this fragmented, scattered, angry, opinionated, me first, egotistical life. which is no life at all.
Mm-hmm.
And for thousands of years, wise people have been telling us, slow down, meditate, don't rush to judgment, be forgiving, be loving. It's not all about you. Don't put yourself first. So this is in, I don't know if it's in every religion, but it
I'm
certainly
sure
is
it
in
is. I'm sure it
most of
is. Yeah.
most of the main ones, most
Yeah.
of the ones that have spread
Yeah.
around the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I wrote chapter 8, and it's the chapter that I'm proudest of, in that
Beautiful.
it was just a bonus chapter, but it ended up, I think it came out really well, and adults
Mm-hmm.
seem to be really enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I've really been on a jag recently about forgiveness. And so I'm glad that when I saw that, I was like, that's beautiful. I'm so glad it's there. Okay. All right. 3 more questions. So you talk about 2 reasons why you feel tremendous hope, because this generation, Gen Z, is not in denial, and also they want to bring about change. And I wanted to share with you a proof point of that. So one of my friends and colleagues, her name is Carrie Brotherson. She teaches at Southern Virginia University in Buena Vista, which is not too far from UVA.
Buena Vista.
Yeah,
I
Buena
remember
Vista.
that. Mm-hmm.
And here's what she said. She said, I assigned my first year students to read Haidt and Twenge's op-ed in the New York Times. This is our chance to pull kids out of the smartphone trap. My plan was to have them read an article I knew they would disagree with, and then teach them how to make a counter argument. Instead, they totally agreed. One student said, at 13, my dad left. Someone handed me a smartphone. How did they think that was going to turn out?
Yeah.
Haidt's articles have validated the emotional or traumatic experiences that many young adults had as teens. But more than that, they indicate a way forward, arming us with the data to initiate change.
That's right. That's why I'm so optimistic, because it's not like it's us adults trying to take something away from the kids that they really want and that they love. As I said, the young ones think they want it all, but by the time they reach 18 or 20, they can see the devastation. And so if most of the parents, most of the teachers, almost all the principals, if the politicians see it, if the kids themselves see it, why aren't we acting?
Yeah.
We just never had a clear path. And then COVID confused us for a few years. And we thought, oh, thank God for social media. The kids are on screens all day long. Isn't that great? But that's why I'm wildly optimistic. I do have a debate with some other researchers. I'm working on that. I think that my side is going to win. That is ongoing. But as the Surgeon General pointed out, even if the scientific community hasn't reached full agreement, the fact that we have hundreds and hundreds of victims every year from a consumer product that is defective means we should be acting right now. And we are acting right now. It's happening all over the world just in the last few months.
It's beautiful. So
listeners, please, what you can do specifically.
Yes, go
to anxiousgeneration.com, scroll through our main page. It sort of lays out the story. And at the bottom, please put in your name and your email address, because we're just getting started, but we'll keep you up to date, emails once a month, maybe twice a month.
Great.
I'm not sure, but it won't be much. So join the movement. Go to afterbabel.com. That's my Substack, where Zach Roush and I put out all of our research. We have all kinds of beautiful writing by members of Gen Z. We have a lot of good stuff. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. And third, if you're a parent with kids in 8th grade or below, please go to letgrow.org. It's a group I started with Lenore Skenazy, who wrote Free Range Kids. We have all kinds of ideas for ways that you can bring more play and independence into your child's life. And we have some school programs that are incredibly effective and that cost $0. They're free to implement, and they have amazing effects, giving kids a chance to try things on their own, and they're ecstatic when they do. The first time a kid walks 3 blocks to the store and comes home with a quart of milk, it's just, I'm getting all, because I get, because parents send me these stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you
letgrow.org.
about your call to action. So that's fantastic. All right. Final 2 questions. Penultimate question. John, what's been useful for you in this conversation?
Well, I think in this conversation, it's the S curve, because I've been thinking about dopamine a lot. I like the difference between different kinds. And so I have this, this image of of a kid like being, I mean, I'm seeing it as like literally an S, but it's,
Yeah.
it's like a kid choosing, do I climb up the S, or do I just slide down to the bottom because
Mhm.
that's easy?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think that's a good visual for the importance of reinforcement that comes after hard work.
Yeah.
That's the best
Mm.
kind.
Okay. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts from me.
Mhm.
Let's see, beyond the fact that we're going to win, beyond the fact that we're going to change this. Um, let's see. I'd like to end optimistically. Um, okay, yeah. So my final thought is that all of this seems hard when you're acting alone. If you're the only parent doing this, or if you're a 28-year-old trying to regain control of your life, it's hard because these things are very addictive. Our habits are very hard to change. But if you do it with a group, it's a lot easier and a lot more fun. So that's why I think why we get such great results in my flourishing class, because it's 35 NYU students and they all work together, they support each other, they give each
Mhm.
other ideas. Um, and so if you're a 28-year-old, oldest members of Gen Z, or if you're a 33-year-old, a younger millennial, and you want to improve your habits, find at least a partner. But it's more fun if you can find a group
Mm.
to say, for example, as one young man told me, he uses a light phone, a little tiny phone that has very few functions. You have to own a smartphone nowadays. I'm not saying don't own a smartphone if you're an adult. You have to. But he goes out at night, or he goes out with friends with only his light phone, or
Mm.
like a flip phone. So if you have a group of friends that commit to doing that, to say, of course we own a smartphone, we have to. But you know what? When we go out at night, we don't bring it, and we do things. We do new things together, and we pay attention to each other.
Mm.
That's the way to do this.
John, thank you. This was very uplifting.
Good, Whitney. Thank you. I got all choked up during it, and I love thinking about possibilities.
Yeah.
So thank you, Whitney.
Mm.